bring cultural and educational Jewish events to the Lake Norman area. This evening's program features Rabbi Judith Schindler, who comes from us for the Stan Greenspan Center for Peace and Social Justice of Queens College in Charlotte, North Carolina. Rabbi Judith Schindler teaches courses in Jewish studies, the Holocaust, and social justice. After 21 years in the pulpit, she is thrilled to now guide Queens students through thousands of years of religious wisdom to learn from the lowest and highest moments of Jewish history. Before I turn this wonderful program over to Rabbi Schindler, I want to remind you of the following upcoming events, also sponsored by the Jewish Council of Lake Norman. As long as COVID-19 finds its way out of the country, we will be holding our 4th annual Jewish Deli Fest on November 1st. Not only is this a well-rounded and attended program, but it's our primary fundraiser for the year. We are open to future sponsors and vendors, and you are able to go to the council's website and pre-order online at a discounted rate. In September, we will have the Federation and PJ Library for apple picking right before Rosh Hashanah, and there will be a Hanukkah party in December. Please be sure to check the council's website periodically to learn of other events. My other announcement is to tell you that Hadassah's virtual meeting.
Well, it's just Mona speaking, introducing Judith Schindler.
Oh, what is that funny greenish water out there? Is it from the lawn care?
I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
My other
I don't
announcement
like it.
looks like
Hadassah's
Yeah, I have no idea.
Tri-Regional Virtual Meeting is on May 17th, and you could go to My Hadassah's website to sign up. Also, the Lake Norman chapter of Hadassah and the Jewish Council of Lake Norman has been holding a monthly Jewish book club on the 2nd Friday of each month. Our next book is called God Cut You Down by John Safran. It is a nonfiction accounting of a white supremacist, a black hustler, and a murder in Mississippi. If you are interested, please go to the chair at jclkn.org for the link. So without further ado, on behalf of the Jewish Council of Lake Norman, I am delighted to present to you Rabbi Judith Schindler.
Thank you, Mona. It is great to be here. I'm sorry I'm not with you in person, but I am sure that next time we're together, it will be in person. And Mona, you are a one-woman powerhouse. You have a vision and you follow through and you make things happen. And it is just an honor to be with you and an honor to connect with all of you. Someone posted last night, they asked me to create an online synagogue. I support bricks and mortar, and synagogues of bricks and mortar, but it's an honor when I can travel to Statesville or Davidson or Lake Norman and be with all of you. So I'm happy to be your sometimes rabbi stepping in and broadening your Jewish life. It is great to be here. I'm going to mute everyone, but you all have capacity to unmute yourselves. So I would never want to silence anybody. That's not my style. So feel free to chime in whenever you want. Unmute yourself and chime in. I am recording this. I can edit. So if there's something you don't like that you want me to edit it after the fact, I'm happy to edit it out. But somebody asked Mona if I could record it and post it. So we'll see how it goes and make a decision later whether we post it or not. It doesn't automatically post. All right, so here we are, thrilled to be together on this night. I did not realize when we picked this night that it was Holocaust Remembrance Day, beginning tonight at 8 o'clock. We in Charlotte are celebrating our Yom HaShoah commemoration tomorrow night. And so I think it was divine intervention that on Yom HaShoah, we would pick a title, Choose Optimism. That was Mona's title, and it is a great title for this time and for this place. Choose optimism. We have control in how we see the world. So I wanted to open really by looking at the Holocaust and sources of optimism that emerged from the Holocaust. So I'm going to share my screen and I will bounce back and forth between my PowerPoint and the Brady Bunch format so we can see each other and engage with one another. So here we are on our PowerPoint, and the topic of today is choose optimism. So it is Yom HaShoah 2020, Holocaust Memorial Day. And there's a story of a man named Abba Kovner. He was a ghetto fighter in the Vilna ghetto. And he fought in the ghetto, and he finally made his way to Israel after the Holocaust. And he felt very alienated. Israel is quite different from Poland. And he really felt lost and daunted and confused and ungrounded. And it wasn't until someone asked him to join a minyan. He was wandering a street and someone said, "Can you join us? We need a minyan. Can you be our 10th?" And it wasn't, and he wasn't a religious soul, but it wasn't until that moment where someone needed him to be the 10th that he felt like he belonged somewhere. And years later, he helped design this exhibit at the Diaspora Museum in Tel Aviv, a great museum. And it was an exhibit of wax figures representing Jews from all over the globe. And in the wax exhibit, there were 9 and not 10 Jews, because Abba Kovner, he wanted that exhibit to call out to others as others had called out to him. And he wanted the exhibit to say, "Come and join us. We need you, and you need us." And that is the heart of what it means to be a part of community. We need each other. We feel that global connectedness more greatly than we ever have. And what has been a remarkable time in this time of Corona is the way the Jewish community has become more global. We can attend services anywhere in the globe. We can hear Jewish music at any time. We can hear great Jewish lectures at any time. So there is this amazing sense of global connectedness. When I created a Facebook announcement for this event, I shared a phrase that was found in a cellar in Cologne, Germany, where Jews hid. And it said, "I believe in the sun, even when it is not shining. I believe in love, even when no one's there. And I believe in God, even when God is silent." So that sense that there's something better out there, something better and brighter in the future, even in the face of the world's darkest times. So today is Yom HaShoah, and last on April 15th was the, here, let me just make sure we're all, on April 15th was the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the concentration camp called Bergen-Belsen. And in Bergen-Belsen, sorry, I was just trying to see, hold on. Bergen-Belsen was a concentration camp where 50,000 people were murdered, tens of thousands of Jews were murdered. And you can imagine with liberation was both a positive moment, but also a painful moment for many survivors, because they've been to survive. And when liberation came, they realized, well, where am I going? Who's alive in my family? What's ahead of me? And many of them had lost all their family members. But in Bergen-Belsen and in so many other displaced persons camps, people turned to each other and they got married because you needed family, you needed to be grounded. And there was one woman, Lily Friedman, and her fiance asked her to marry her. And she said, "You know, I've always dreamt of getting married in a white wedding dress." And so her fiance, he didn't know what to do. Where are you going to find a white wedding dress for a tall, emaciated woman in Bergen-Belsen? What did he do? He traded 2 pounds of coffee and several packs of cigarettes for a parachute, and a seamstress made Lily Friedman a white wedding dress. Well, this wedding dress was shared by bride after bride after bride, and they stopped counting at 17 brides. But not only that, there were some days 5 to 7 weddings in Bergen-Belsen. There were some weeks where there were 50 weddings in Bergen-Belsen. In 1946, 1,070 marriages took place in Bergen-Belsen. From 1946 to 1948, the record global birth rate was in survivors' camps. In the months after liberation, 2,000 babies were born. I don't know what's a greater sign of hope and optimism than to have endured the Holocaust and to turn around and to make babies. So if those 1 and 2 generations before us, or some of us, it's our own generation, if they could emerge and have that faith in the future, I think we have no excuse but to have that faith and that hope and that optimism. So Yom HaShoah is today. Does anybody know why Yom HaShoah is today? Why did the Israeli government, right, the Knesset, choose this day, the 27th day of the Jewish month of Nisan, as Holocaust Memorial Day? Anybody know what the root is? Frida, do you know? Oh, you're muted, Frida. That'll be my mantra. Let's see if she can
I don't know for sure, but I have to think it has something to do with the Shoah, and it's Day HaShoah. So
right. Yep. So it's Holocaust Remembrance Day, right? But if you had to pick, let's say we're all Knesset members, right? And the year is 1959, and we're like, you know what? We need a day to remember as a country. We have so many survivors here, and right, they stop what they're doing, traffic stops, the horn blows, everyone is silent in remembrance. But if we had to pick a day, we're all members of the Knesset, what date might we pick, right? Somebody died, there was a tragedy every day, right? From 1933 to 1945, we could pick any day of the year. Sylvia.
Would that be the day of the Warsaw Uprising?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, right? That they fought back against all odds. We didn't want a day where, you know, it was a day where we showed resilience and resistance and faith and strength. And especially Israel, the Knesset, chose that day. Now, much later, the UN created International Holocaust Remembrance Day. That is January 27th. Does anybody know why that day was chosen? So we know Israel chose Warsaw Ghetto Uprising because they're going to fight, right? They're never going to let that happen again. We're never going to go down without fighting with every last ounce and every last bullet that we have. So why was January 27th chosen as International Holocaust Remembrance Day? Frida, you got that one?
I think it's the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz.
Exactly. Good job. So we have to find a meaningful date. The Orthodox do not worship, they do not follow this date today as Yom HaShoah. So the Orthodox don't mourn during this season. From Pesach to Shavuot, and so they wouldn't have this formal day of mourning in such a way. So they connect it to Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av, which is a formal day of mourning when we mourn the destruction of the first temple and the destruction of the second temple, and so many other tragedies that befell us. Okay, let me just hold on one sec. I am gonna just hold on one sec. All right. Okay, good. All right. So let me go back. That was my reflection on sources of hope in the Holocaust, that we could spend weeks on this topic. Okay, so now, okay, hold on one second. Sorry, I gotta find my little bar for moving. Okay, so where are there sources of optimism and hope in Judaism? Anybody, if I said, okay, where are the sources? Does anybody have an answer? Where do you think you find sources of hope and optimism in Judaism? And you're gonna have to speak out if you have an answer, or raise your hand and I can see that. If not, any ideas? Where do we?
Bible?
in the Bible, that's a great first thing. Any place in the Bible where we see hope?
Yeah, getting out of Egypt.
Getting out of Egypt, great. Passover is a symbol of hope, right? We made it out of those hundreds of years of slavery. That liberation has inspired so many people, so many communities and oppressed peoples to move forward. So I could have most definitely chosen getting out of Egypt. It's funny because I chose a different one, but that would have been an even better one. We've been liberated in the past, and we will be liberated again in the future. I'm going to end with that vision of an ultimate liberation. That's at the very end of this talk. I chose this portion called Shalach Lecha because we get out of Egypt and we say to Moses, Moses says, I want to send out scouts to see what this land of Israel is like, this land of Canaan. He sends out 12 scouts, one from each tribe. And 10 of the scouts come back and say, oh my gosh, we can't do it. They are like, we are like grasshoppers in their eyes. They're huge, they're ginormous. There's no way we can do it. And two of the tribes, the two of the spies representing two of the tribes, Joshua and Caleb, they said, yes, we can certainly overcome them, right? We can do it. They said, let us by all means go up to the land and we shall gain possession of it, for we shall surely overcome it. Now, those 10 spies who had negative reports and saw things negatively, the Israelites believed them. And that's why the Israelites would have to wander for 40 years in the wilderness, because of those 10 spies who looked at it negatively, who were pessimists. And so that whole generation would have to die out to follow the optimists, Joshua and Caleb. So I think the message is we are not meant to be pessimists. We are meant to say, you know what? We can certainly overcome this challenge, and we can certainly overcome the challenge of coronavirus. We have the greatest thinkers, the greatest scientists working on this. I know I'm hoping the Israelis find the cure first. I think that would be really great. But whoever finds the cure, that's okay. That's amazing. But I know Israel has done amazing things. So it's that optimism. You know what? We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this together in the best way possible. So that's the example from the Bible. I wanted to choose an example from the Bible. I wanted to choose an example from the Talmud. And I wanted to share an example from Jewish tradition. So the first example is from the Bible, the spies. The second example is from the Talmud. And there's this teaching in Judaism, not just in the Talmud, it starts in the Talmud and extends through Jewish tradition. The rabbis say that when we die, we will be asked 7 questions up in heaven, right? Before we just imagine there's a metaphoric heaven up there, and God is going to ask us 7 questions. Anybody know what any of those questions are that will be asked when we get up to heaven, according to Jewish tradition? Let me just check the chat box. Tali, is there anything I need in the chat? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, Tali, are there any questions in the chat box I need to be aware of, or we're good?
We're good.
Okay, awesome. Okay, anybody know a question will be asked when we get into heaven in the Talmud or Jewish tradition? Number 1 question, were you honest in business? Okay, how we act in the world matters. My husband sometimes works with some angry people at the Bank of America, right? They're big time bankers, and they're working on very big deals, and sometimes they're very, very angry and don't treat people nicely. And I always say to Chip, please let me talk to this guy, right? Because life, this is life. It's not like we work somewhere and go to work 9 to 5 and that's a separate part of ourselves. All of it is who we are. And the first question will be asked is, were you honest in business? And were you good? Were you a mensch in business? Were you the best you can be? So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is, did you procreate? But, we can make children in lots of ways. We don't just have to have children, right? Did you raise children? Or did you value your family? Question number 3, did you set aside sacred time for study? Which, you guys got this, check. You're doing it right now. On Yom HaShoah, you are studying. Did you grow in your understanding? Did you let your studies seep into your soul and transform you? Question number 5, Tzipita lishua in Hebrew. Did you anticipate redemption? Did you live with hope? Right? Did you live with hope is one of our questions we're going to be held accountable for. Did you deny yourself permitted pleasures? I love this. Ice cream is okay. Okay? So, did you deny yourself permitted pleasures? Right? When you get up to heaven, God's going to say, did you see my Alps, right? Did you see my mountains, my Blue Ridge Mountains and the Pacific and the gorgeous world in which I created for you? And question number 7, were you your best self, right? God won't ask us, why were we not Moses leading people to freedom? Why were we not Joshua leading people into the promised land? God will say, why were you not? God will say to Mona, why were you not Mona? Right? And God will say to Frida, why were you not Frida? Our job is to be our best self. So among the 7 questions we'll be asked when we get up to heaven, if we do have this divine moment, will be, did we live with hope? Did we see the positive? And 2 more Jewish teachings, which I think are really powerful. I love teaching because I get to learn so much. There is this, the word tikva, right? Tikva means hope. And Jeremiah says, and Jeremiah, you should know, he's the biggest downer of a prophet, Jeremiah. Nobody wanted to invite Jeremiah to their party. My Bible professor had a cartoon. It said, oh no, don't invite Jeremiah to the party. He was a downer. But even Jeremiah says, yesh tikva, there is hope. So if Jeremiah can say it, the rest of us can say it too. The word tikva is hatikva, right? Israel's national anthem is the hope, right? We've lived with that hope. And what's interesting, I saw this amazing teaching that the word mikvah, right? Mikvah is mikaveh is to hope. It has the word kav and cord in it, the word cord. So when the Israelites were entering the promised land, Joshua sent ahead spies as well to seek out what was in Jericho, right? What was the battle they were going to have to face? And there was a woman, Rachav. She was she had an inn. Maybe she was a prostitute. We're not really sure. But she had the spies in her home so they could scout out Jericho. And the spies offered to save her before the walls of Jericho came tumbling down. So how would they know which window she was in? She let down a red cord, which was called the red cord of hope. And so there's this sense of like a lifeline that we need to give that cord of hope to others, to be that thread of hope each and every day to those in our world. And the final Jewish teaching is really amazing. We know Hatikva, and I'll just quote the words, right? Kol od belevav. As long as within our hearts the Jewish soul sings, as long as forward to the east to Zion looks the eye, our hope is not yet lost. It is 2,000 years old to be a free people in our land. We were exiled from 70 of the Common Era to 1948, and we never lost hope. And Zechariah has a beautiful phrase, right? Zechariah was, after the first temple was destroyed, Zechariah was one of the ones who inspired us to rebuild the temple, to get back there, to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild. And he called us Asirei Hatikva, prisoners of hope. What does that mean to be, what does that mean to you to be a prisoner of hope? What does it mean that Jews are prisoners of hope? Shelley, are you going to share something? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know if I did it right. To be an optimist.
To be an optimist. So how powerful, 2,000 years ago, Zechariah said it, right? We're prisoners of hope. So do you see us as Jews, as the Jewish people, being prisoners of hope? And what's evidence that we are prisoners of hope?
Well, I think even during the Holocaust, when they were in concentration camps, they didn't give up. Most didn't give up hope, as horrible as it was. They wanted to beat it. They wanted to show victory. They wanted to live. They wanted
Wonderful. Great. Anybody, wonderful. You know, there's all this post-Holocaust theology, right? How do you account for God in a world where 1.5 million children are murdered? And there's one theologian, and his name is Emil Fackenheim. And he says that the Holocaust gave us a 614th commandment, right? There are 613 commandments, and the Holocaust gave us an extra commandment. And that commandment is not to give Hitler a posthumous victory, right? Not to let, we can't let him win after his death by allowing Judaism to disappear. We have to hold fast to it. So we've had a painful history a lot of times, and we've always held fast to that hope. Anybody want to add any insights to be, what does it mean to be Asirei Hatikva, prisoners of hope?
Rabbi, this is Diane or Daisy here.
Yes.
Okay, so my thought is just following our upbringing, or we're prisoners in a way of the thought of we can't give up what we've been taught. That's the right way to think. That's what keeps us as a Jew. I mean, I could have turned to anything else, but remaining Jewish to me is because I'm trying to hold on to whatever I was born into. In a way, sometimes it does feel like being a prisoner, you know?
Right.
Why don't I think something different? But it's what holds me on.
When we left Sinai long ago, we built a Mishkan, a little tabernacle, right? Our temple, because we wanted to take Sinai with us on the journey. And when we got to Jerusalem, we built a bigger temple, right? And when we left, we started to study. We built houses of study, and we went back and we built another temple, and then we built synagogues. But we've always carried our text with us, our hope. Like this, what we are doing right now is carrying our temple with us, right? So we had a tent, a tabernacle in the wilderness, then we had a temple, a first temple, then we had a second temple, and we had synagogues. And today we cannot be in our synagogues. So this Zoom, right? This is our Beit Knesset, our house of gathering. We have always reinvented ourselves. We're in cyber Judaism. We will be forever changed because we recognize that we should never let somebody be at home who's homebound without connecting to Judaism, right? We should be like, I'm gonna get my iPad and get it to your house and make sure you are connected to community. Nobody should ever be trapped in their home. They should be a prisoner of hope, not a prisoner in their home. And our homes have become that sacred space that we carry with us wherever we go. So now let's think, this title that Mona gave me was Choose Optimism. And so I'm gonna get back to sharing. Hold on one sec, it's a little frozen, which is totally fine. Let's see if it'll let me share. Okay. I made nice slides for each new concept. All right. Okay. So let's move to the next concept. Before we move on from Jewish tradition, I saw a psalm that I loved today. And I'm going to use it tomorrow to frame my memorial talk. And then on Wednesday, I'm talking with Myers Park United Methodist Church on Psalms. And so this psalm came into my mind and sort of grabbed my mind over the past day. And basically, it's Psalm 30, and it's a Shir Chanukat Habayit LeDavid. A Chanukat Habayit is a housewarming party, right? When you move into a new home, you hear the word Chanukah, means dedication. Bait means home. A Chanukat Habayit, I'm having a housewarming party, a home dedication party. So this psalm was a dedication for a home. It says it was a song of David when perhaps his son dedicated the temple, but we don't really know. But what we know, imagine Holocaust survivors getting somewhere and building a home, right? Getting out of the displaced camp, getting to a new place, Israel, America, South America, wherever, getting a home and having a Chanukat Habayit, a dedication of their home, and putting their mezuzah up on their door. They have a new home. And so this psalm, the song, Mizmor, a song of dedication of a home of David, it says, God, you have turned, hold on, I got to move my little thing. You have turned for me my mourning into dancing. You've put off my sackcloth and clothed me with gladness. You've taken off my clothes of mourning, my rags, and clothed me with gladness, that I may sing praise to you and not remain silent. Lord, my God, I will give you thanks forever. So you turn my mourning into dancing. That is optimism, that we will move forward from whatever grief that we have, and we can, and we will dance again. So now we need to, what is this optimism thing? And what is this hope, and how are hope and optimism different from one another? So optimism comes from the word in Latin meaning best. The optimist looks for the best in any situation and expects good to happen. So the Jewish optimist, a Jewish optimist and a Jewish pessimist, they were sitting around and talking. The Jewish pessimist turns to the Jewish optimist and says, "Oi, things can't get worse for the Jewish people." The Jewish optimist turns to the Jewish pessimist and smiles and says, "Sure, it can get worse for the Jewish people." Just two more thoughts on optimism. Shimon Peres, he was prime minister, he was president of Israel. He had lots of reasons to be a pessimist. But when he died, one of the people who wrote his biography shared a quote from him. And Peres said, "Optimists and pessimists die the same way. They just live differently. And I choose to live as an optimist." So we're all going to die the same way, but we can live with that hope in the future, or we can live with that sense of negativity. Now, this joke is, this next joke is a joke that Ronald Reagan loved, President Reagan. And it's a strange joke, but I think it's an important joke to share. So I want to share it with all of you. So here's the joke that President Reagan, one of his favorite jokes. The joke talked about twin boys of 5 or 6 years old. Worried that the boys had developed extreme personalities because one was a total pessimist and one was a total optimist, their parents took them to a psychiatrist. First, the psychiatrist treated the pessimist. Trying to brighten his outlook, the psychiatrist took him in a room piled to the ceiling with brand new toys. But instead of yelping with delight, the little boy burst into tears. "What's the matter?" the psychiatrist asked, baffled. "Don't you want to play with any of the toys?" "Yes," the little boy bawled, "but if I did, I'd only break them." And then the psychiatrist turned to the optimist. Trying to dampen his outlook, the psychiatrist took him into a room piled to the ceiling with horse manure. But instead of wrinkling his nose in disgust, the optimist emitted just a yelp of delight the psychiatrist had been hoping to hear from his brother, the pessimist. Then he clambered up to the top of the pile, dropped to his knees, and began gleefully digging out scoop after scoop of this horse manure with his hands. "What do you think you're doing?" the psychiatrist asked, just as baffled by the optimist as he would by the pessimist. And the pessimist, this optimist boy said, "With all this manure," the little boy replied, beaming, "there must be a pony in here somewhere." So with all this, and I'll say it in an inelegant way, right? With all this shit, right? Like, it can happen. Life can just give you, a pile of something you don't want to touch. And to be able to say there is good in the midst of this somewhere, I know it, is an image, that obviously spoke to Reagan, President Reagan, and helped him see really the tough experiences of life. And we are facing, a once in a century trauma and crisis. And it is overwhelming. and we can become overwhelmed by it, or we can say, no, there are the silver linings, and we are going to find the silver linings, and we are going to make the silver linings, and we are going to celebrate the silver linings. Yes, Shelley.
Well, the old phrase, it's when life gives you lemons, make lemonade.
Right. And we're doing that right now, right? We're getting on, we're building connections. So my dad was a great rabbi, and I loved him a lot. He died in 2000. And he would have this phrase that he'd say to me all the time. And he'd say to me, right here on the left, for those who can read Hebrew, Gamza Latova, he'd say to me, it's all for the best. I remember I went through a hard breakup in rabbinical school. Like, I thought I was going to marry this guy, and I was devastated. And my dad's words were, Gamza Latova. Gamza Latova, it is all for the best. And there's another phrase, Gam ze ya'avor. And there's a story of a Holocaust survivor, and he went down to Parkland after the Parkland shooting, and he shared his mom's expressions, Gam ze ya'avor, this too will pass. So these are our mantras. Gamza Latova, this is all for the good, even when it is hard to see. And Gam ze ya'avor, this too will pass. So I've had a little extra time because I don't have to travel to work or travel home. And so I've been able to go deeper in the Talmud, which has been great. Like, when I see a quote, I can delve more deeply. And I keep being brought into this one page of the Talmud that I really want to spend an hour studying with anybody who wants to study it with me. And but there's this guy, his name is Nachum Ish Gamzu. Nachum is his name, right? There's the name, the Hebrew name Nachum. He was Nachum Ish, a man from Gamzu. So he was from a village called Gamzu. But here's the thing about Nachum Ish Gamzu, which is pretty amazing. Nachum Ish Gamzu, he, hold on one sec. Nachum Ish Gamzu, he was also called Nachum Ish Gamzu because he always said Gamza Latova. That's what he said. No matter what life brought him, he'd say it's all for the best. So he was really known Nachum Ish Gamzu, not because he was from Gamzu, but because he would say Gamza Latova. And this man lived a really tough life. He lived in awful circumstances. He was severely debilitated, but no matter what happened, there are all these amazing stories about him. He would always say Gamza Latova, and there would always be a silver lining afterwards. And he was the mentor of Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva he was a famous scholar, he did not start studying until 40. And there's a great story in this tractate Tanit about Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu. But I'll just share the story of Rabbi Akiva, a famous story. Rabbi Akiva was traveling, and he was on a journey with a donkey, a rooster, and a candle. And he was weary, and he came to a town, but there was no room at the inn. So he was turned away, and he had to spend the night in a field. That night, a lion came and devoured his donkey. And this is in the Talmud, this tractate I keep being led to. A wildcat came and gobbled up the rooster, and the wind blew out his candle. But Rabbi Akiva, who was taught by Nachum Ish Gamzu, Rabbi Akiva said, Gamza Latova, it's all for the best. In the morning, he woke up. He learned there had been an attack on the inn where he had wanted to stay, a murderous attack, a violent attack. And so indeed, the fact that he was out in the fields was for the best. So that's Nachum Ish Gamzu. So where do I see light today, or where do I see optimism today? I see optimism in the immense sources of light. So Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, another favorite of my rabbis, you're going to see two of them. Well, you heard about my dad, he's number one. Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav is number two. And now Rabbi Huna is number three of my top favorite rabbis. But Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, he really struggled with depression. And he taught that if we each seek out that one spark of goodness of light in every person, in every situation. Eventually, the darkness will fade. So the light is actually in every person, and our goal is to seek that light out. So Yom HaShoah, some of you were on a call before with your temple in Lake Norman, and you lit a candle. So why do we light a candle when someone dies? There's a phrase in Psalms or Proverbs that says the soul of the man is the lamp of God. So person's soul is just like physical light, and it reflects God. We light light after death to fill the void, the emptiness we feel. We light a light because light brings joy. Light brings physical joy, and the soul of our departed brought us spiritual joy. Gosh, there's so much to teach, but I'm going to keep going. This was a teaching I recently learned, a mystical teaching about the source of tzedakah, giving charity. And the teaching is that when on the fourth day of creation, God created the sun and the moon, right? And God made the moon's light lighter than the sun, right? The moon was smaller than the sun. But tradition teaches that the moon doesn't emit any light of its own, right? This moon reflects the light of the sun, and both benefit from it. So the Zohar says this sharing of light between the moon and the sun from this moment on the fourth day of creation is the mandate to give tzedakah. Because just like the sun and moon share each other's light and are enriched, so we are supposed to give to those in need, and we're supposed to share our light, and that light bounces back onto us. Today, I see optimism not only in the light that people are sharing, but I see optimism in the rainbows. Now, how many of you have taken a walk? I'm just gonna shut this off for a sec so we can see. How many of you have taken a walk and seen rainbows in windows? Have any of you seen kids' rainbows? So when I walk in neighborhoods that are where the houses are more close to one another, I see lots of rainbows in windows. And what is fascinating about these rainbows is that they arose from the kids, and they arose globally. So the rainbows arose from the kids to the community, to the healthcare workers, creating scavenger hunts all over as a sign of hope. And so if you think about, anybody know where the rainbow is in the Bible? Where's the rainbow in the Bible?
Oh.
After the flood.
Yeah.
After the flood. And what is that rainbow? Why is there a rainbow after the flood? Does anybody know what the rainbow represents after the flood?
Promise
It's a promise. And what's the promise?
that the world will never be destroyed by water again.
It's a promise that the world will never be destroyed. So it's a covenant and a promise. And that's what that rainbow is. So I just found this from a newspaper yesterday, because the rainbows just seem to be everywhere. And I'll show you just two examples of these rainbows, but they're everywhere. And the rainbow says there will be a rainbow after the storm. So the rainbow is a promise, right? God says, never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant. So it says that as the coronavirus continues, children from all across the globe are trying to put a smile on everyone's faces. Children all over the world have been placing handmade rainbows in their windows to spread joy during the global outbreak. Earlier this month, families across Italy began posting banners, paintings, and drawings with rainbows that included the message, I can't speak Italian, Tutto andrà bene, which means everything will be okay. Even though the trend began in Europe, the rainbows started showing up in people's windows through the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Dozens of rainbow pictures can be found in New York City and Philadelphia. So I think that's an incredible reason for hope, is that our kids created this notion. I see light beyond the rainbows. I see light in the humor. So in a minute, we'll stop, and I think we'll do this now. Just before I give you this task, we're going to go into breakout groups. In 2013, there was a Pew study, and the Pew study asked thousands of people, what is an essential part of what being Jewish means to them? 73% see remembering the Holocaust as a critical expression of their being Jewish. 73%. 69%, right? Like 7 out of 10 said leading an ethical life and working for justice. Only 28%, only 3 in 10 people said being a part of Jewish community was essential to their Jewish identity or their Jewish expression of being Jewish. But 42% said having a good sense of humor was critical to being Jewish, right? Was an essential part of what it means to be Jewish to them. So having a good sense of humor is really important. So my question for the breakout group, if you have a pen, you can write it down. You're going to be put into breakout groups. Why is it that 4 out of 10 people think having a sense of humor is so critical to their Jewish identity, right? Why is it like it's more important to more Jews than joining community? So what is this sense of humor? Why does sense of humor matter to so many Jews as a part of their Jewish identity? And number 2, what has made you smile and laugh? Where have you found humor during this coronavirus? Because there has been humor, right? Late night TV hosts, memes. So I want you to share with your group something that has made you laugh or smile, that has been humorous during this time of crisis. So I'm going to divide you into 6 groups. You're going to be in 6 groups of 4. You're going to have 5 minutes to talk about this question, or 4 minutes to talk about this question, like why do you think humor matters so much to Jews, and what's something funny that you've seen during this coronavirus crisis. And what's going to happen, you're going to get a little click to join, and then you're all going to be brought back here. So don't worry, you'll get a 1-minute warning, and you'll all be brought back to this room. So we're going to break you into 6 groups of 4. All right, enjoy your conversations. Okay, do you see where it says join? You have a little button that says join. Good job. Mona, are you going to join? Okay. Good job. All right, Beverly, do you have an option to join a group?
I'm afraid I don't.
Welcome back. Okay, it is great to have everyone back. We'll start with group number 1. Tali, Gary, or Frida, do one of you want to share just why did you care so much about humor, and what was the funniest thing you heard in your group? Tali, you want to share?
Sure. Actually, Frida has some great things that she said. I don't know if she's back on yet, but I can share something that she shared. She and I'm speaking for Frida. I don't see her, but
I'm here.
Oh, do you want to share why the humor?
Yes. Yeah. You know, it's humor and hopefulness and optimism. It's all those wonderful emotions all wrapped into one. And I came about finding it so in an unusual and unexpected way. My daughter sent me an invitation to join a group on Facebook called View from My Window. And it's a global connection where people post their a pretty view from their window, whether it's pretty or it's beautiful or not, but it's the words that they accompany the photo with. It's musings, some are commentaries of their lives, what they're going through. And it is an eye-opener because it ties in all the things, Rabbi, that we just talked about. And that's optimism and hope, and that we're all together, and that even though we're apart, and that we all have to support each other, and with some kind of humor, but also with sensitivity. And honestly, that has enriched me immeasurably this week, especially because I'm here in this house all alone, day after day, night after night, and I really feel enriched. And if anybody is interested, they really ought to look into it on Facebook.
So it's View from My Window.
Yes.
Wonderful, beautiful. Okay, thank you. Now group 2, Eileen, Howard, Joan, and Sylvia. Anyone want to share just a thought on why Jews care about humor or something funny you've seen? I think Sylvia and her husband's looking. Did you all want to share?
No, tell them about Jackie Mason.
Oh, you told them about Jackie Mason. We have an inordinate number of Jewish comedians, right? That's how we've just sort of managed through the crisis. Good. Marcia, Shelley, and I can't read my own, Sherry. Shelley and Sherry. Anybody want to share something, a reflection or a funny thing? Sherry, do you have something to share from your group? Oh, we got to unmute. Sorry. Let's see if I can do that for you. Okay.
I mentioned Aunt Frank, and she had so much optimism. She was in hiding for over 700 days, and yet she still had a profound impact on history, on human beings, and her life, her legacy is with all of us.
Great, great. And I could have easily like added an Anne Frank quote because she really maintained her hope in the face of dark times. Great. Group 6, Joel or Sue. Anybody want to share from that group? Marcy? I can't read my writing. Or Mary, I think. I don't know. Actually, anybody else? Well, I'll just open up to group 6, 4, 5, or 6. Anybody want to share any other thoughts that haven't been shared?
I will share one of my favorite memes that I've seen during this crisis. And Sherry, who was my daughter's 2nd grade teacher, will really enjoy this one too. It was a Sesame Street meme. It was Bert and Ernie, and they said the year 20. The Bert and Ernie were in the picture, and they said, the year 2020 is brought to you by the letters W, T, and F.
Perfect. And the memes have been a lifesaver during all of this. So I'll just close up. I had, of course, like another hour of talks, but we're gonna move to it, see if you have any questions. I just wanted to show you what else was on my mind as I put this together. So we will fly through the rest of the PowerPoint. The Jewish value of education above all else, no matter what, no matter where, no matter how, has really extended to the world, right? We're maintaining education for our kids, doing our best. So this was a meme that flew around when parents had to realize they were homeschooling. Homeschooling going well, 2 students suspended for fighting, 1 teacher fired for drinking on the job, which was the mother, of course, or father. This one, I'll never let my kids sit in front of screens. And then you have kindergarten in 2020 with a little kid in front of a computer screen. And I was going to tell you a funny story of Helm, but it's a long story, and I guess I'll tell you in a minute. But the TV shows, like there's this really ridiculous show called Tiger King. How many of you, just by show of hands, have seen Tiger King or know of the phenomenon? It is the craziest psycho guy who grew tigers, and they were like drug dealers, and it was just awful. But like the whole world is watching it, and everybody's talking about it, and there are jokes about Tiger King wherever you go. There are municipalities doing funny headlines just to brighten people's day. So the Maryland police remind residents to wear pants when they go to the mailbox. That was a real headline. People are using humor to speak to their communities. And the sages of Helm were these wise and foolish sages in the mythic city of Helm. And it was really gloomy in their time. And they wanted to capture the moon, the light of the moon. And so what they realized is that if they created a huge bowl of borscht, right, they could capture the light of the moon when the moon was full in this bowl of borscht. So everybody brought their borscht, and they had a huge bowl, and it was a full moon, and the moon shined brightly on the bowl of borscht, and they had the bright light inside the moon, so they covered the bowl in order to save the light for dark times. And what happened was, in the morning, the next night they opened it and the moon wasn't there, right? And they said someone stole the moon, the light, the moon from the bowl of borscht. And ultimately the rabbi said, he had this funny closing statement, because it's usually the rabbi that has the wisdom in Helm. The rabbi, they said, the next day the moon was high in the sky, right? And they were outraged. Someone had let the moon out of the bowl of borscht. After interrogating everyone, they came to the rabbi, who admitted that he was the one who let the moon go free. But why, oh, why did you do that? The people cried. Because, explained the rabbi, no one can capture the moon in a bowl of borscht. It is impossible to stop the cycles of the moon, just as it is impossible to stop the cycles of our lives. What do we do now? The people cried. Without having control of the moon, we will be forced to live again in the dance between celebration and despair, between light and darkness. The rabbi nodded knowingly. Yes, as we always have, we will find a way as we always have. At least now we have borscht, lots and lots of borscht. So it is Yom HaShoah, and we are facing COVID-19. And tonight we don't even have a bowl of borscht, but we have one another, and that will be enough. So I'm just going to fly through the final slides, and then we will take some quick questions and answers, and I will close. I was going to talk about Musar, which Musar are character traits. This is a great time for us to work on our character. So we definitely could spend actually Wednesday night, I'll be teaching about Musar. So if you want to join us for cocktail hour, wine and wisdom, you can sign up, and we will be studying equanimity and honor. But Musar are character traits, and this is a great time to work on our character. So we could work on generosity. That's a way to bring about optimism by getting outside of ourselves. We could work on an attitude of gratitude. Every morning when we wake up, we're supposed to say, Moda Ani, like, thank you, God, for this new day, that you've renewed my breath of life. How great it is, how great is your faith, God, and your trust. And then the other Musar, the other character trait, is the pursuit of peace, both inner and outer peace. And I love that French Prime Minister Macron is seeking global peace during this time of Corona. It is a time of growth where we are challenged to grow in all sorts of ways, whether it's making masks or being kinder people or taking on new talents and hobbies and learning how to use Zoom. There is a symphony of nature. I learned in studying about the moon and the sun that that this year it was the earliest spring that we'll ever see in our lifetimes. And the moon was the biggest, the moon of Passover was the biggest and largest moon of the year, a supermoon. So the world has never looked more beautiful. And one way of finding optimism, my favorite rabbi, Reb Nachman of Bratslav, one of my top 3, he said you should go outside and sing, pray in the sanctuary of nature. So nature right now is as spectacular as it has ever been. We find optimism in friendship, and we find optimism in community. There was a rabbi who went to visit the home of a congregant who decided to leave his temple, and the rabbi sat with him at the fireplace, and the rabbi took one of the embers that was glowing and moved it away from the log in the fire, and it started to go out, and he moved the ember back towards the fire, and it flamed again. And we need friendship, and we need community to be sustained. And then I will end with this one, but let's just take a minute for questions and answers. All right, does anybody have any questions before I finish up the talk? Anybody have any questions about optimism or hope? Okay, no questions? All right, so I want to finish with 2 final stories about the Jewish people and hope. One is about the Holocaust, going back to the Holocaust, and one is about L'chaim and the toast that we say. So here we are. Hold on one second. There's a Hasidic tale of a Ukrainian work camp during the Holocaust, and the prisoners were told to evacuate their barracks, and any person left behind would be shot. And there was pandemonium as people pushed their way through the doors, screaming the names of their relatives and friends. And they ran towards the fields where before them were 2 huge pits. A harsh and cold voice pierced the air. Each of you dogs who values his miserable life and wants to cling to it must jump over one of the pits and land on the other side. Those who miss will get what they rightfully deserve. It was clear that all the inmates would end up in the pits. So among the thousands of Jews that were in the Ukrainian fields was a rabbi named Rabbi Israel Spira. He was standing with a friend who he met in the camp, a free thinker with whom he developed a deep friendship. Spira, all of your efforts to jump over the pit are in vain, the friend said. We will entertain the Germans and their collaborators. Let's just sit down in the pit and wait for the bullets to end our wretched existence. My friend, said the rabbi, one must obey the will of God. If it was decreed from heaven that a pit be dug and we are commanded to jump, pits will be dug and we will jump. And if, God forbid, we fall into the pits, only seconds later we will reach the world to come. The rabbi glanced down at his feet, the swollen feet of a starved and diseased 53-year-old man. He looked at this young friend, a skeleton with burning eyes. As they reached the pit, the rabbi closed his eyes and commanded in a powerful whisper, "We are jumping." When they opened their eyes, they found themselves standing on the other side of the pit. Spira, we're here, we're alive, the friend repeated over and over again. For your sake, I'm alive. Indeed, there must be a God in heaven. Tell me, Rabbi, how did you do it? And the rabbi said, I was holding on to my ancestral merit. I was holding on to the coattails of my father and mother and my grandparents and great-grandparents of blessed memory, said the rabbi. And he turned to his friend and said, tell me, how did you do it? How did you make it to the other side of the pit? And the rabbi's friend said, I was holding on to you. So in order to heal, we need to hold on to one another. The Talmud says, just as a prisoner cannot free himself from jail, so does the one who is ill need others to free himself from pain. The rabbis of old who were healers could not heal themselves. They needed others. And the last thing, the last source of optimism, and I encourage you, if you have a glass of wine at night, we could have all done this. We'll do this Wednesday if you come to Wine and Wisdom. We say the words l'chaim, to life. And so Rachel Naomi Remen, who's a great doctor and healer, she tells the story of her grandfather. Her grandfather gave her her first Kiddush cup when she was a child. And he taught her to say the words l'chaim, to life. And so she asked him, is it to a happy life, Grandpa? And he said, no, it's just l'chaim, to life, neshamala, my sweet little soul. Is it like a prayer? She asked. Oh no, he said, we pray for things we do not have. We already have life. Is it written in the Bible, Grandpa? No, neshamala, he said, it's written in people's hearts. L'chaim means that no matter what difficulty life brings, no matter how hard or painful or unfair life is holy and it is worthy of celebration. So throughout our history, whether in the midst of parties or parades of independence or in the midst of poverty and trials, our people have lifted their cups and said, l'chaim. So on this night, it might be a little untraditional on Yom HaShoah Eve, probably is. But if you want to do it tomorrow night, you can, or tonight, to lift your cup and say l'chaim, to celebrate the beauty and the hope of the world that we know. So Mona, I'm going to bring it back to you to close out the evening. Is Mona still on?
I'm sorry. I'm a little slow when it comes to computer technology, but I'm getting a lot better.
Good, okay.
Thank you, Rabbi. You did a wonderful job like usual. It's been a pleasure. I think I've learned a lot that I didn't know. And I thank everyone for being part of this. And hopefully we'll have more Zoom meetings that we could share.
Wonderful, thank you. And if any of you want to come to Wine and Wisdom on Wednesday at 5 to 6, you can just write info@greenspancenter.org or just find us somehow, or Mona will pass it on. And we welcome you. That will be, we didn't feel like on Yom HaShoah we should be having cocktails, but you're more than welcome on Wednesday. So to life, to all of you, to Jewish community that has always sustained us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.